This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, you are urged to like and share them on Facebook because it's time for Rudy Howard's African American Scene, presented each week by Howard Insurance in Port St. Lucie and hosted by Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. Your host is playing hurt here tonight. I had some surgery Friday, some follow-up surgery, and I must admit I'm in a little bit of pain, but I'm here. I'm here for you. I know there's things that you want to talk about, so I felt obligated to get here tonight. Prior to last week, I had an open mic night where I'd introduced some subjects, and we didn't get a chance to get to many of them. So I'm going back there. And last week, as you know, I had Anaya. And just to remind you, we're in the process of trying to see if we can start a local chapter of National Action Network. So if you're interested in that, please contact my office, 343-9878, and I have applications. I would tell you that I had some questions in my mind until I saw what happened with Greg Hill. The incident with Greg Hill and that settlement convinced me that was such a gross injustice that it certainly would not hurt to have National Action Network in our community. Let me, if this is the first time that you've ever listened to me, here's the way I do this. On an open mic night like tonight, I lay out some subjects. I invite your comments, and our discussions are based around those subjects that I present to you. Let me give you topic number one. Our democracy is more fragile than I realized. That's serious. This president has made me realize that our democracy is very, very fragile. Topic number two. President Obama was the only president in the last 50 years that had no indictments and no convictions under his 8 years as president. Now, you can dislike him all you want, but there's something that says about his leadership that there's none, zero indictments and zero convictions. Topic number three. There is a segment of white people that feel whites are facing discrimination. And I think that might be the source of some of the anti-immigration sentiment. If you as a white person are feeling discriminated against, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me how it is that you feel discriminated against, and give me some examples of how you have been discriminated against. I want to listen and learn from you. I think there's probably people on the other side of that argument lack a certain sensitivity in wanting to hear out what your frustration is. So I do want to hear your frustration if that be the case. And the number for that is 343-9878. So I'm interested. If you feel like you've been discriminated against, please educate me. Next topic. The United States is deporting people that have served in the armed forces. You think that's right? Do you think we should be deporting undocumented people who have put their life on the line for the United States? I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say about that. I think here's a next topic, and this is a topic that's near and dear to me. We never seem to get anywhere with it, but I'm gonna try again. This is as hopeless as it is when I talk about racism, but we have to put an end to tribalism for the sake of our country. And I think that is so critical that we put an end to tribalism. It is okay for us to have beliefs, and it is okay for us to subscribe to certain principles of the group that we belong to. But it's not okay to do that at any cost. And it's not okay to make up lies and distortions in order to support that position. Because when we do that, we are in a hopeless merry-go-round of not going anywhere, which is kind of where we have been in the last 20-some years with respects to our government. And at some point, we have to stop it. And it's not easy, but I think it has to be done. And the last topic, and this again is something that I think is pretty important. We often get a lot of criticism from the average American about Europe. They feel Europe is a socialist. They believe in socialism, and most, especially conservatives, feel socialism is destructive and not helpful to our society. But here's what I'm going to say about that, and I'm willing to entertain your thoughts. Here's how Europe differs from us. In Europe, they put a great emphasis on their people. And a budget is nothing but a statement of priorities. So they do not put as much money into building aircrafts and aircraft carriers and tanks and missiles and missile rockets as we do, because it is more important to them that people get health care, that people are able to get advanced education degrees. Now, you can criticize them for that, but culturally, that separates them from us. Why? Why is it that they feel that it's so important to them, yet for us, we seem to not find the same degree of concern when it comes to our people? Now, and I'm going to give you a classic example. We have said over and over again that the cost of health care is out of bounds. We can't afford it. When the farmers screamed about the tariffs and what it was doing to the cost of their crops in the Midwest, we instantly came up with $12 billion to offset some of the pain and suffering that they might go through because of the tariffs that are being imposed by the president. Where did that money come from? How come that money was all of a sudden available when we were saying that there's no money for any of the needs for our people as far as health care is concerned? And the next issue I'm going to tell you is the education of our kids and the need for quality teachers. The world has changed. we need to invest in quality teachers, because if I'm a quality human being and I have a postgraduate degree and you're going to pay me $35,000-$40,000 a year, I'm going to go work somewhere else. Why should they? And in the interim, our kids are not being trained by the best people available. Now, some of you know I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I moved here from Long Island. And one of my best friends is a retired teacher from Quorum. And he has a 6-digit retirement salary from the school board that he worked for. Now, some of you are going to say, well, how could they afford to do that? Well, how could they not afford to do that? Because he had a master's degree in chemistry from the University of Syracuse. He was a highly, highly qualified individual. And for those of you that think teachers don't work and don't invest, he was doing his grades for his students on an Apple floppy disk before it became standard fare for school districts to provide provide computers for the teachers. He did that on his own. I have sat in his house and watched him do that work, and some of you probably don't even know what a 5 1/4 floppy disk is, but I watched him do that. Cliff's over here shaking his head because that's like a dinosaur, but that's what he did. So they had a quality teacher that retired from their system who could have done anything, and in the summer times, he worked at the Brookhaven lab as one of their scientists for the summer and made very good money doing that. Now, and he taught advanced academic courses. So had they not paid my friend, those kids would not have gotten this high quality teacher. And that's where we have to get to. And instead, and this goes back to the Europe thing again, we will give tax cuts to businesses with the idea that the money will trickle down. And then one of the first places that we cut when we say there's a budget crisis in the state is we cut the education. We cut teacher salaries. The police officers make us pay them because they won't do their work if you don't pay them. Teachers don't have the same leverage. So we cut the teachers or we freeze their salary, and then we wonder why. Some years ago, I had an opportunity to participate when my good friend Vanessa Tillman was still head of the teachers union. I had a chance to participate in the new teacher hires. And I particularly met these 3 very bright, perky, young folks that were from Michigan, and I met their parents, and their parents made me promise that because I was doing the auto insurance for them and helping them with their tenant policy, and they made me promise I'd look out for them. But those kids are gone, long gone, because they didn't get paid. So they left and went elsewhere. When are we going to stop that? We have to stop that. In I think it's Japan. Japan pays their teachers like engineers. And shouldn't we? After all, our teachers are the ones that are doing the preliminary training for the kids that will someday be a doctor or an engineer. Yet somehow their contribution does not receive the proper respect that it deserves for helping to crank out these young folks. And contrary to what my conservative friends tell you about the public school system, without even knowing for sure, and you know I don't like to do this because I want to make sure I'm factually correct, but I feel very safe in saying factually more than half of the people that are in our state legislature and probably in our Congress are from public schools. So what's so bad about public schools? And why shouldn't we invest to help make our public schools more successful, which in turn will make our children more successful? But anyway, that's my thoughts. Let's go back to, and again, I welcome your thoughts. That number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. I'm very interested, and I didn't think I'd get a call, but I read the article about white people feeling discriminated against, and there is a book that I read, Angry White Men, by Michael Kimmel, and he went around interviewing white men all over the country to try to find out why they were so angry. And we have Steve on line one. Yes, sir.
Hey, Rudy, how you doing?
Okay.
I heard you were sick. I had a new knee put in myself.
Oh, okay.
So we're helping the economy.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
On public schools, I went to a meeting one night at the school board, and they were talking about charter schools and public schools, and I think public schools are the greatest thing that's ever happened to this country.
Yep.
And so I said to them, could I see a show of hands of everybody that graduated from a public school? And they all raised their hand. And I said, well, the way you've been talking about public schools and charter schools, you've been trying to imply that public schools were inferior. I guess that makes all you the village idiots. And, man, you ought to see the look I got then.
Yeah.
But stop and think about it. In other countries where you have to pay to go to school, about maybe 20% of the people get educated.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Texas, then it's about 5. But America's got to get their head screwed on straight. Public schools provide quality education. How do they think we got this far, technologically, medically, you name it, farming, you name it. It's like my knee, a robot put my knee in.
Yeah.
Well, the robot didn't get that built because he went to a private school or a charter school. Chances are a public school education was a basis for this engineer that invented the robot.
That's right.
That did my knee. So I really write these people off, and I say to myself, gee, how do they figure if they pay their teachers less? So because remember, they're a business, so they got to make a profit. And according to University of Miami 2012 study, 25% of them in Florida go out of business.
Yep.
Those kids are all left behind. They're a year or so behind, and they're thrown into the public schools where there's no money because they gave it to the private school.
Yeah.
And the other thing, what was the other thing you mentioned?
Well, I talked about tribalism and the need to, we have to put an end to that. And the other thing I talked about, which I'm sure you must have an opinion on, is that our democracy is much more fragile than I had realized prior to President Trump being elected.
Absolutely, and I can tie them both together. In Vietnam, when we had a racist in our outfit, I asked him, I said, now let me get this straight. You get hit, I'm not supposed to get you any help unless it's a white Puritan Christian. And if you need blood, I've got to screen it to make sure that it's white blood, right? And the guy just looked at me, and I said, you know, I was waiting for you to answer it just to determine how stupid you really are. but that's the way I feel about it. You name one thing that's different between you and I other than pigmentation of the skin.
Yeah.
Name one thing. And if white people don't like people of color, why are they oiling themselves up and laying on the beach and cooking like a turkey?
You know, I have tried to figure that out for years.
Oh, yeah, I hate black people, but I want to be dark as I can.
Yes, I know. That's an amazing thing. That's an amazing
I'm
thing.
glad you agreed. I thought maybe I was, in need of some psychiatric help.
No, not at all.
But I really am getting sick and tired of hearing the same old drumbeat about race, about tribalism, about all that. Whenever now anybody says, I'm an Italian American, I'm an Irish American, I go, wait. Well, my friend said he was an Italian American. I said, where were you born? Milwaukee. I said, what part of Italy is Milwaukee in? You're an American, maybe of Italian descent, but you're an American, and it's time to take pride in America.
See, here's the thing. We have the perfect example that we can look up to. Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia were best friends. Most people didn't know that. They were best friends. And you couldn't find two people more different. But they had respect for each other's thoughts and philosophies. While they disagreed, they had respect for another person's thoughts and how they felt about things, which allowed them, because they, and in all of their discussions, as would be expected for someone that reached that level, is based on facts. So
yeah, it's the other thing I really get sick and tired of hearing is, I saw this black woman in a grocery store with steak and lobster, and she paid with a credit card from welfare. And then she got in her Cadillac, drove away with her painted nails and all that. And I said, whoa, wait a minute right now. I said, don't they ever drive a Continental or anything else? Is there always a Cadillac? And most black people that I know don't eat lobster, So let's change this story up a little bit and start blaming it on the Mexicans or the Indians or somebody else, because it's a tired argument.
Yeah.
And when someone gives that argument, you can tell they have no knowledgeable base in which to work from.
Well, Reagan started that in 1980 with the welfare queen. And that argument stuck and is still with us to this day about the welfare queen that was going out and living this lavish lifestyle on welfare. And I've read a couple of different places. They've never been able to find this quote-unquote welfare queen that he cited. Now, do I think there may be somebody out there that has done that? The answer to that is yes. But do I...
Three times as many white people as black people on welfare. Do you know that?
Of course I did. Yes.
So
I had that survey on here one night, and a couple of white guys called up and he said, "Yep, I knew it." He said, "I don't think the rest of my people believe it, but you're absolutely right. There's more white people on welfare than there is black people."
Absolutely. You want to see poverty? Go to Appalachia.
Oh, yeah.
Want to see some white poverty? Go to Appalachia.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, all these arguments are designed to split us up, to make you think, oh, this party is so good. Remember, it was Ronald Reagan, the only president in the United States history that gave amnesty.
Yep.
People don't know that. You tell them that, they go, oh, no, he didn't.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And he also said when he did it, this will never happen again because of what I've done today. We'll never have an immigration problem again.
Yeah.
I'm still laughing. You know, I mean, Reagan started trickle-down economics, which led to the Great Recession.
Yep.
Amnesty. Now, if all these Republicans are so hell-bent on getting rid of the immigrants, then I want to remind you something. If you go to Walmart out here in St. Lucie West, a head of lettuce is $1.29. You go to Publix, it's $2.50. What do you think it's going to be if all the migrants leave and the little white suburban kids got to pick that lettuce?
Hey, there's no question.
The kid that wants to be manager on his first day at work.
Yeah, there's no question. I've been saying that for about 6 months, Steve. The cost when people have to pay $15 for an orange, then the light bulb's gonna go off and go, oh, I don't think I want that. Oh, you don't? You don't want that? Well, what the hell did you think was gonna happen?
Well, the same farmer that they interviewed about the white boys picking lettuce, he said, you know, at $20 an hour, I don't think I'd get anybody anyway.
Right, exactly, yeah.
They're not going to go out there in 95, 100-degree heat all day, bent over, slicing lettuce and putting it in the basket behind them.
Yeah.
So they fill it up. He said it's not going to happen. And the commentator I thought was hilarious. He said, well, we could get him an umbrella and have somebody go alongside with lemonade. That could be a benefit. Might help.
Yeah, right.
But
Steve,
America's got to come together, or we're going to disappear, just like Rome.
Yeah, well, Steve, I got to take a break, man. Thank you, my friend, for calling.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Okay, don't touch that dial. Give some thought to some of those things that I mentioned, and I want to hear from you. That number is 340-1590, because we'll be right back with the African American scene.
Serving the entire Treasure Coast, Howard Insurance and Associates in Port St. Lucie offers a wide variety of insurance products, along with the very best customer service. Whether you're shopping for the best homeowners coverage at the most affordable value, contact Rudy Howard's team at Howard Insurance and Associates. If you need coverage for your vehicle, call Howard Insurance and Associates, 343-9878. That's 343-9878. Maybe you're planning to add a boat, motorcycle, or RV. Call Howard Insurance and Associates for your free quote at 343-9878 and get the coverage you need at a cost that will fit your budget. For home or business, auto or recreational vehicle, choose Howard Insurance and Associates, 600 Southwest Darwin Boulevard, Suite 206, Port St. Lucie. And for your free rate quote, call them at 343-9878, 343-9878. WPSL Treasure Coast weather with meteorologist Glenn Glazer is brought to you this hour by Seacoast Air Conditioning. Call 772-466-2400.
Rain chances will pick up this afternoon here on the Treasure Coast with isolated to scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible developing inland, but then possibly drifting back from west to east. Any thunderstorm that develops could be strong and some rainfall could be heavy. High temperatures today in the low 90s and light winds out of the southeast. I'm WPTV Storm Team 5 meteorologist Glenn Glazer for WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Thank you, Glenn. And out on the waters from the Sebastian to the Jupiter Inlet this afternoon, southeast winds at 5 to 10 knots. Seas will run 1 to 2 feet. You'll find a light chop on intracoastal waters. Weather this hour is brought to you by Seacoast Air Conditioning, your hometown air conditioning company since 1982. For repairs or a whole new system, call 772-466-2400.
Comfort crisis, don't roast, call Seacoast.
6:36 at WPSL. Now we return to the African American scene. Once again, here's Rudy Howard.
And good evening, Chuck. How are you?
Good, Rudy. Doing fine. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, on your first topic there, discrimination. I can remember back in 1966, just got back from Vietnam, was stationed in Northern Virginia. 4 of us went up to look around the nation's capital and check things out. And while we were walking around, we came up on a store, kind of like a Woolworths. I don't remember as it was or not. But we walked in, and we were the only 4 white people in there. Everybody else was black. We sat there for 5 minutes, and nobody waited on us. And so we kind of got the idea we weren't welcome there, so we up and left. And while we're going out the door, there was a lot of murmuring and talking going on when we left, but we just left. So that happened, and I used to work at a liquor store down there, Edwards Road in Fort Pierce. It's not there anymore, but myself and a clerk there were the only 2 white people. The manager was black. The other 3 clerks were black, but we got along like family. We were all best friends. We used to do things together. Now, what I had a problem with is when we would have a line, I'd always be jumping in to help the other clerks. And to have a black person stand there and look at me, and then as soon as the black clerk was empty, the black guy would go right over and start talking with the black clerk like he knew her, like old best of friends. And afterwards they would leave, and I'd say, "How long you known that guy?" He says, "I don't know. I never met him before." And I thought that was kind of rude myself.
Okay. Well, why did you feel that was rude?
I was there. I was smiling, trying to get him to help him, and I guess he just didn't like me. I treated him no differently than the other clerk. Okay?
Okay.
So, and I think some of the reason white people have a discomfort being around black people is I was watching a video clip of a show that's on somewhere. I forget what the name of it is, but they were talking about, I think they called it switching, where a black person will talk to a white person one way, and then as soon as they turn around and see another black person, they start talking a different way. And it kind of makes a white person feel uncomfortable because you're kind of like, what's going on? I just soon have you, talk the way you do to another black person. Let me try to figure out what the heck you all are saying,
Are you suggesting that doesn't happen among white folks?
How would we do that?
Well,
I'm just asking.
Oh, well, okay. Well, do you think Uncle Joe on Thanksgiving sometimes unleashes a bunch of N-bombs about how he feels about people of color?
Well, I can't say that about my family doesn't. No.
Okay, but I'm just saying.
I'm just saying. No, that's not what I'm talking about, Rudy. I'm talking about. We're talking this way. Now, do you talk to your black friends differently? Do you say some things that aren't the same words that you and I would use?
Yes, but not in a yes, but not in a negative kind of way. There's just
no. It's never in a
yeah. There's lingo
right.
that I would not use with you because I would think you might not get it. So then I would talk.
You're right. You're right. I probably wouldn't. But
okay.
I could act. Why couldn't you use it? Let me ask you, what the heck you talking about, Willis?
Okay.
All
right. That's a fair criticism.
Yeah. Now, one other thing, Europe.
Okay.
Why? You hate to hear it, but why cramp up? Why crank up your military when you got the United States jumping all over the world doing your bidding? Now, Germany's military right now is in a state of disrepair, and they couldn't stop the Ukraine from attacking them and taking over. I read a report in Deutsches Welle about that, and they were talking about how bad the state of the German Army and Air Force and Navy. They don't have a Navy per se, but it's not that. And their society is not all. You lose a lot of freedoms. I lived there for 6 years. They got a truck that runs around like they used to have back during World War II, looking for radio transmitters to catch spies. Well, this truck goes around and locates TVs that are playing, and if you haven't paid your taxes on TV, watching their TV channels, then you get your your TV turned off. You don't get any access to it or anything until you pay your tax bill. Now they only have like 3 or 4 stations. Now
I remember those. I remember those days too. 3 or 4 stations. But okay.
Right.
But okay. But the point that I was trying to make, and I don't want that to get lost on you. And I gotta let you go because I got a bunch of calls backing up here. Is that a budget is a priority item, and if the people in Europe, they put a high emphasis on their people as opposed to other things. So I think that's that's the
One
point that
last
I'm
thing,
trying.
and I'll hang up.
Okay.
You need to study up on China and their hypersonic missile, and Russia and their hypersonic missile. We don't have one. We're in trouble. I'll let you go.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right.
Well, he was talking about to white folks different than to black folks. What came to mind was my youngest stepdaughter was going to try to appall her stepdad and her mom by dating a black boy. And he came over, he was good looking and all that, and he was so sensitive. He had a soft voice like Michael Jackson, and she was just gaga over that. And he's talking to her really soft like Michael Jackson, and then she went into the bathroom, and his phone rang. He answered the phone. He goes, "Dog, what's happening?"
and we got Winnie. Yes, Winnie.
Hey, how you doing, Rudy?
Okay.
I was laughing right here about the Michael Jackson thing.
Yeah.
You're saying something about Greg Hill, about it. They have awarded his children $1 apiece. That's what I heard.
Yes, that's correct.
And they did what? They did. My daughter, she heard on the news. They were doing a GoFundMe page for them.
Yes.
What the GoFundMe page is for?
Well, to try to help give some compensation to the family. I would imagine they may need help with some burial expenses, and he may not have had life insurance to keep his family afloat now that he's gone. So I would think that's what the GoFundMe page. I asked people for my birthday, which was a few weeks back, to make a donation to them. So yeah, that's what I think that would be about.
He been dead for like how long? They have about 3 years.
No, not 3 years. No, that just happened this year.
Oh, they happened this year.
I think so. Anyway, but yeah, but the verdict was just maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago.
This year. I thought it happened like a while ago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, this year. Well, how can people donate to the GoFundMe page of that?
Go look it up on Facebook and look for GoFundMe for Greg Hill, and I'm sure it'll pop right up.
Pop right up.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then. Well, have a good day.
Okay, you too. Take care. And Steve, yes, sir.
Hey, buddy. I'm glad you're on the mend.
Yes.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yes, it
It
is.
is tough. Hey, I know I don't want to get your heart and blood pressure up today, but yeah, I know it's your show, and you have the right to say anything and whatever your heart's content is. You know, but the last time we talked, you made it very difficult for me to be logical in my reasonings, and all I can assume is that maybe you were reading my mind, or and you kind of bragged on your intellectual superiority. But here, I was interrupted before I had finished, and you said, "I know where you're going." You said, "I'm too smart to fall in your traps of reasoning." And then you said, "Steve, the conclusion is," and then you went to say what you thought I was trying to say, which was Donald Trump's lies should be overlooked because everybody else lies. And that could be Steve, Rudy, Hillary, Obama. And that, I'm going to tell you, that was not that's your presupposed conclusion. It was wrong. Let me explain what my conclusion was going to be. My conclusion was going to be even liars can tell the truth sometimes. That could be Trump, Obama, and Hillary. And this election, we had more information about the candidates than any other time that we've had about their character and who they were and what they represented. And Trump won. Now, that doesn't dismiss the Ninth Commandment about lying. I agree with you on that. But in the words of Professor Rudy, when Obama was president, you said elections have consequences. Get over it. So I was going to try to, just kind of caution you on your evaluation sometimes. If you assume exaggerations to be the same level as a lie, then we can't trust hardly any politicians at all. And
you still came back and just said what you said you weren't trying to say.
No, I didn't. That's not what I said. I said elections have their consequences, and we got to get over them. I didn't say to get away from the lies.
Okay, well let me say this. First off, I don't believe that I ever said elections have consequences. That doesn't sound like a phrase that I would use. But here's the point that I'm going to make about Trump, which conservatives failed to acknowledge. He didn't win the popular vote. So they're complaining that people are not getting over it, but he lost the popular vote by over 3 million. So the vast majority of America disagreed with him.
Let's go one step farther.
Okay,
though,
well, wait, let me. The
I
Electoral
understand
College.
where you're going with it.
The Electoral College is what made him president, and we can have a debate about the relativity of the Electoral College, but the fact of the matter is, over 3 million people disagreed with him. Therefore, when there was an immediate backlash to him taking over as president, that should not have been a shock to anybody.
But that is the misunderstanding of our government.
No, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Let's not go to the Republic thing. I get that. We've already gone down that road. The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of people did not vote for Donald Trump.
Actually, the vast majority of the people didn't vote at all.
Okay.
So don't play that game. But the game is this, though. The way it's settled, and by districts. Take a map and look at the map and see how many districts Trump won compared to how many districts and where they are. We're a representative republic. That's so that big cities don't dictate where tax money, where everything goes over just because they have more people in big cities. I mean, all you have to do, from your standpoint, all you have to do is win big cities and you've won. And that's the fact of the matter. And that means that we are, as a representative republic, that means, like I told you before, 51% ruling over 49% is a democracy, which means a democracy means that the individual doesn't have any rights. It's a minority in that vote. They don't gain a thing. But in a representative republic, I have the opportunity, which you are doing, to express your dislike or like of a candidate or of the system. But if you're in a democracy, then if you use a democracy, just think, there's more white people than blacks. So should white people have more vote? And we'll just let the white people vote because they're the majority.
Oh, that's what you've been trying to do the last few years anyway.
No, it's not.
Well, yes, it is. That is what you've been trying to do. But that's another argument for another day. But that's another argument for another day.
But I know you probably didn't read the book, the Screw Tape Letters. But I came across another a book also by the same author, C.S. Lewis. It's called The Abolition Man. It's really interesting reading. And sometime I'd like to talk to you about what Wallace wrote, because he misses a lot of stuff too. And
he does?
Yes, he does, because he is. And here's the thing: I would wish you would do it when you're talking to people. Ask: is this an objective reasoning, or is this a subjective, emotional reasoning?
Who decides what's objective and what's subjective?
But the definition of the word describes it.
Well, okay.
Really.
Well, define objective for me.
Objective means that the facts are the facts. The apple is red. The subjective thought would be, the apple tastes good. And here's another example out of this book I just read. Two guys walk up to a waterfall. One says, that's a sublime waterfall. And the other one says, that's a pretty waterfall. Those are two different statements. And actually, one of them is conditional about emotion, feel. And the sad part about what we have is just what you mentioned. We've come to the point where objective and subjective are hard to define because it's easier to play on men's emotion than it is to play on the facts.
No,
but I understand. One other statement.
No. We can. What has happened is, and here's where I fault conservatives completely. Conservatives want to have ideological purity as part of their political philosophy.
That's subjective. You're being subjective right now.
No, okay. I'm going to say, from the empirical evidence that I have been able to gather in my life's experience, conservatives want to have ideological purity, which means they are unwilling to modify their philosophical approach to things in order to gain a larger majority of people. And that ultimately, let me finish, that ultimately is going to be the death of the conservative movement. Because while you are trying to maintain ideological purity in order to support your philosophy for how you want to do things, there is a group of people out here who do not believe in it, and you do not care whether they believe it or not, as long as you can maintain that purity. So what we have is a situation where you want to force that philosophy.
Wrong.
Oh, well, you can't tell me I'm wrong. If this is, I'm telling you what I'm saying from my point of view. I'm saying from my point of view. Okay.
And that's exactly the point I was trying to make. There can be facts about subjective things, but if the base of the argument or the discussion or the debate is subjective, then it's all about emotion, feeling, right, wrong, ideology, physics. And that's not what I try to do. Every time you call it a trap, every time I come on here, I try to present a premise and then support that premise to come up with a conclusion. And you call that a trap.
Well, no, you try to trap me.
Subjugation is a trap.
You do try to trap me. You try to give me, you go around the East Bend when the ultimate goal is to end up in the West. And you think because if you go around that direction and give me a different illusion of where you're trying to get to, I won't see it. But I do see it.
Rudy, now, if I give a subjective reasoning back to you of just what you said, I say, no, it isn't, Rudy, because I feel what you just said was untrue. Do you see how that argument goes? There's no answer there. Once we run into what you just did, it makes it hard to have a logical, constructive debate to come to conclusions, because when you do this all the time, you talk about feelings and emotion and how what real is what a person feels. Reality is reality. If it's not, then what we feel is reality, and there is no reality except our own reality, and our reality doesn't matter about anybody else's reality. And then they go to the next stage where it's a group's reality is not, and it just amplifies itself, and that's why we get to the point where the democracy is very fragile. When you have objective and subjective people trying to come to a conclusion that's the best for the people. Oh, there's no, it's like good and evil.
Well,
one tries to subjugate the other.
The democracy is fragile because our democracy is one of the greatest experiments in the history of the world. And what I have come to realize that maybe I didn't completely realize prior to Trump becoming president, to have a successful democracy, there's a certain amount of norms that must be accepted as part of your governing philosophy. And if somebody's willing to overlook those norms and disregard them as part of the governing philosophy, the democracy is injured, and it is hobbled, and it is crippled. And I have to go because we're at the end of the hour. So call back next week, and we can finish this discussion.
Hey, I love you, man. Take care.
Okay. Folks, I'd like to thank you for listening to the African American Scene. God bless and be safe, and I will see you next Wednesday right here for the African American Scene.
And Rudy, it's okay to refuse to be subjugated. Okay? All right. Freedom from subjugation. You've been listening to the African American Scene every Wednesday night, the 6 o'clock hour. Archives of this show are on YouTube at WPSLTV.com. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie. And, of course, we thank you for joining us every Wednesday night in the 6 o'clock hour for the African American Scene right here on Digital 1590 WPSL, the talk of the Treasure Coast.